Kristen Baldwin, TV critic at Entertainment Weekly, and I'm your host today for Half Hour with Evil. And joining me today are the Emmy-nominated creators, showrunners, and exec producers of Evil, Robert and Michelle King. Welcome.
Hi, Kristen.
So Evil is a show that almost defies description because it doesn't fit into any one category. So of course, I'm going to ask you to describe it. How would you describe it to someone who's never seen it before?
Let's see. It is three normal people who are brought together because they have different views of the nature of evil, whether it's supernatural or pragmatic or of this earth. And one's a priest, one's a psychiatrist, the other is basically a scientist. And they are hired by the Catholic Church to look in people who seem to be demonic, to figure out whether they need an exorcism, because the demonic so easily imitates the mad. So are these people crazy or are they supernaturally demonic?
Well, there is so much to talk about with season 4, but before we do that, let's take a look at the trailer.
We're going to be parents. In 38 days, a child will be born.
They will sing hymns in your honor, the mother of the living antichrist.
I had a vision of an angel telling me, woe to Babylon. 38 days.
Are we really on that level of crazy?
It's biblical, so yes.
We've already hunted werewolves and demons. Are we now hunting witches?
Okie dokie.
Hold that thought.
What happens if the Antichrist is baptized?
Who's the Antichrist?
Timothy, 3-month-old baby.
Let's just give him an exorcism.
This house needs protection. It's under attack.
Devalidate. Oh, shit.
Did you ever wonder why the omens get the infancy?
Because that's the real horror.
So the first season of Evil was on CBS, and it was much more of a procedural, and then it moved to Paramount Plus for the remaining seasons. And I guess I would ask, how did the move to streaming change your approach to the storytelling?
Well, it was, as you say, more case of the week on the network. The violence or the blood and the gore was a little more vivid and upfront when it was on streaming, and also the sex.
And also we found one thing with streaming that we were doing, like with Good Fight and some of the other streaming shows, is that it could sustain more of a serialized, a thematic sense of a story. So with season 2, 3, and 4, we found ourselves telling one story over the course of those episodes, which is interesting because you're finding cases of the week that kind of help you as a building block, like a Lego building block for that story over the course of the season.
And as we saw in the trailer, this season, the battle between Kristen, played by Katja Herbers, and Dr. Leland Townsend, played by Michael Emerson, centers around baby Timothy, aka the living Antichrist. Talk about what interested you guys about bringing a sweet little baby into this very scary and creepy environment of evil.
It's just like Kristen, Katja's character, says, the real evil is in infancy. We just got a kick out of seeing Leland Townsend, who is perfectly incapable of taking care of a child, suddenly entrusted with this child he has to raise.
And I think I mean, first of all, and I do a lot of things because it makes us laugh.
Yeah.
So one of the things that made us laugh this year was this idea of um, that one of the scariest thing is an infant, and that so many of the things you see in Exorcist of someone throwing up pea soup and so on happens naturally with a baby. So the baby projectile vomiting in the way you usually think of as demons. And then one last thing is so much of the material in the show for us is like the call is coming from within the house, which is a horror trope. But to us, that doesn't mean that the killer is upstairs and he's a stranger. It's more that the worry is it's your family. The worry is what is here right in your presence. And if you read the news, that's what you find a lot of evil comes from is something you're most familiar with. And that A is more scary and B, I think more comic in this sense that we're using it.
And it's interesting because in the trailer, when Leland tells her, you're going to be the mother of the Antichrist, she just laughs. And Kristen's initial reaction to a lot of the things this season initially is sort of like, I'm just going to laugh it off. I'm done being horrified. And it's such a relatable sentiment, especially right now. Like, talk about what was the thinking behind her sort of reaction, like, everything's threatening. I'm not going to freak out about everything because I just can't.
We had just finished The Good Fight, which was another show, and the Christine Baranski character was facing a lot of what is going on now with politics. And she was realizing at a certain point, you had to get off the train of the insanity.
Mm-hmm.
Insanity was going to keep going no matter what. And if you got off of it, you could preserve what really matters in your life. I think that slopped over into what we were doing in this show, that the insane is always there in our present day horror. And at a certain point, you got to protect your little valley of the things you can control. And that is what's interesting about the show too, is it kind of keeps coming over and biting a little more of what you control.
But that said, I think the reason we can show that as being a healthy alternative is because Kristen, in fact, professionally never does turn away from evil.
Right.
She is confronting it week after week. So while she might say, I need a break, this is not a person who turns it off.
Right. She doesn't put her head in the sand. It's a good lesson, I think, especially for today. Like,
oh yeah,
you gotta limit your exposure to the horror,
and for us, some of the shows we wanted to do were about Chat GPT and the way it isn't kind of infecting our lives. And as the Andrea Martin character plays a character named Sister Andrea says, that's evil. She just thinks it's evil that that we could be controlled with the emotionality and the personification of AI in our life.
And, one of the things the show does so well is present viewers with mysteries that seem supernatural, but they also could have perfectly rational explanations. So this season, the team investigated demonic pigs at a pork farm, a possessed AI chatbot, a robotic surveillance dog. Talk a little bit about coming up with these ideas and where the sources of your inspiration were.
We have a writer in the room, Dwayne, who was obsessed with the way food is processed. And that's where the pig story came from.
Dwayne Darian Jones.
And Dwayne was interested in that. And he's also connecting it with a biblical story about Jesus exorcising someone who was demented and throwing that demon into pigs. And the pigs committed suicide by running off a cliff. And he kind of found a way to combine those two together. And often we have a big board of everything we want to pursue. You often find a way to break the through line of that story by throwing in something else. The other one in that was the 3 young women who are, amateur exorcists, which was based on something real. And so you're often finding things that are real in life that you want to play off of. We did one on dance, which for us was about, muses. At what point is a muse a possession? If you're in the midst of writing a novel and you become just controlled by it. Here we connect it to dance. And how much does Christianity or Catholicism suspect someone who is in the thrall of a muse? But incorrectly, aren't artists, in many ways seen as demented by some Christians. So there's always little things like that. You're either pursuing a philosophical idea or a story, or children's stories. We love too, children's sense of scares in their house. The Mother May I in the closet of the last episode, things like that.
Michelle, as you mentioned, Kristen does stay in the fight. She never gives up. And her battle with Leland builds to a physical confrontation in the finale. So let's take a look at that clip now.
Woman, would you weep for me? Just sitting around drinking with the rest of the guys. 6 rounds of bought and I bought 5. Spent the groceries and half the rent, like $6.27. So dang me, they ought to take a rope and hang me high from the highest tree. Woman, would you weep for me?
She almost had him. Why did you guys decide to have David and Ben stop Kristen from killing Leland?
I thought that clip was really typical of what we tried to do with the show, which is, yes, it was a really tense, violent moment, but the music's comic. So it changes it. It shows it isn't taking itself too seriously.
Was there any debate in the writer's room like we should kill Leland in this moment?
Yeah, a lot. A lot of people, one of the things we've been pursuing for a while is that he's killed, but then you see someone wake up in, Baton Rouge or, some small town, and it is the same character, and the evil just can't be killed. But we also love the silent episode, which brought us back to this cabinet that contains a demon. And that gives us some sense of where a fitting answer to whether, this thing is really evil, as in supernatural, or not. So we went through a lot of bouts on that.
Michelle, where would you land if you were king of this show and you could choose? Does he live or die?
He lives, because I think that is the reality. You don't extinguish evil, much as you try.
Yeah. Robert, you directed this episode. What was the biggest challenge in directing that struggle between Kristen?
The biggest problem I saw, because we want it to be almost a sexual strangling, that if you look at Katja's, her performance, she starts to have this grin on her face, and there's almost this sexual excitement. And even on Leland's front, that he's kind of in this almost sexual position. The hardest part was for Katja, because he was lying on top of her the whole time. And it was a hard one to shoot. It took, we don't spend that much time shooting, but we had needed to get quite a few angles. So that was it. And, knowing at what moment you should interrupt it. It was by accident that the earbuds flew out of his ears when he went back. So we decided to use that for the music too, because we've been playing that he's really into Roger Miller, which is just a very 1950s dad kind of thing to have. And so to have that and then have the music kind of get lower because the earbuds out just felt like a great thing. So you're always happy for little accidents.
Yeah, no, that was a great touch. And it brings you really into the moment because you're like, you hear what she's hearing. Your previous shows, including Good Wife and Good Fight, have explored the dynamics of big corporations. And this season, we got to see some of that in Evil as Cheryl, played by Christine Lahti, tries to get ahead at the demonic company DF Global Solutions. And at one point, she's rewarded with an office that has a literal glass ceiling, which is hilarious. Talk about how this idea of having her in this environment came together, and what was your favorite part of having her kind of deal with this sexist, corporate, demonic world?
Again, it struck us funny.
An evil corporation would carry on all the traditions of the Harvey Weinsteins and everything into this new embodiment. And of course, she would get a success, but she'd have to crouch in her office under this glass ceiling. I think the most fun thing about that is when the women in the I mean, here's the thing that's funny. You're cheering on the women in this corporation that is about corrupting mankind, but you're cheering them on as they bring their together to weaken the glass surface. So when the men go out to smoke their cigars on it, they all crash through and, get pierced with glass. I guess what was funny is it used a lot of the politics that we see and a lot of the writers saw in their other jobs they could bring to here. The idea that the men got a bonus and the big demon says, well, you got bonuses too. And the women said, no, we got gift certificates to Victoria's Secret, which was based on one of the writers' real story of working at one of these. So it was a way of also satirizing what's going on in the business world, even in Hollywood.
The show also kind of managed to explore the Catholic Church itself as a corporation, with David being one of the few Black priests and, worrying that his final transfer was the Black bluff, like he's being put in charge of something that's doomed to fail. Have both of you always been interested in how the sausage is made, so to speak, when it comes to the Catholic Church?
Oh, yeah, I'm obsessed with it. I mean, I'm a Catholic since birth, and I do think I'm, 100% believer. And I do think the problem with anything that you're involved with is the bureaucracy. It becomes its own anchor on whatever it is. On the Writers Guild, it becomes anchor on writing.
While we might be students of the Catholic Church, we're also students of television.
Yeah.
And so it was very important to us to not fall into the cliche, which is on every show where you see a Catholic priest, in 35 minutes, you're going to learn he's a child molester. That just wasn't interesting to us.
Yeah.
There was so much more to explore rather than fall into that cliche.
Right.
And then the other thing, Michelle makes a good point, is the other is the preachiness that TV can tend towards, both left-wing politics or whatever. There's a tendency to have characters actually just say the point of the show. So we just wanted to avoid those things.
So Sister Andrea, we've talked about her a lot, played by the incomparable Andrea Martin, took a big role this season. She became kind of a one-woman demon slayer. Let's watch a clip of her confronting the demon of grief.
Jennifer Stewart Lowry, this is Sister Andrea.
Oh, yes, I sometimes see you at morning mass.
Oh, of course, of course. How are you?
I think we're about to find out.
Are you all right, sister?
I'm fine. I'm fine. Thank you for...
We're considering the possibility of an exorcism or spiritual counseling.
Maybe you could join us.
I will.
As far as I understand, you guys had her in mind for this role from the get-go. What made Andrea Martin so perfect for this role?
It was not an accident that the character was named Sister Andrea. Same with actually Kurt Boggs. I mean, occasionally there are actors would be perfect for the part, and you might want to nudge it along.
The writer's room was talking about how grief felt because people had loved ones recently die, and and often what it felt like is a heaviness, that it felt like you were hauled out. So we thought, the show always works well with personifying the feeling. So it's this little demon that digs holes into people and puts rocks in where it pulls out their organs. Sister Andrea, of course, is the only one who can see that in operation. And the other thing was that big hulking demon was a demon of words, which was sucking words. All right. And again, that was a writer's room thing. There was one day we all felt just like yawning where it was catching. It was catching that we couldn't find the words to what we were saying. So a lot of the show is trying to find what we all see as psychological states that we're in and finding demonic representations of it.
So you guys learned partway through production of this season that this would be Evil's last season, and Paramount Plus gave you 4 additional episodes to sort of wrap up the story. What was most important for you guys and the writers as you crafted those final 4 episodes?
To give a satisfying ending to characters we love. You wanted to honor the characters in addition to the actors.
It was difficult because the show is about the uncanny, the thing that is unexplainable. And the difficulty is resolutions are explained. So how do you keep a David Lynch kind of ending? How can you kind of make it either happy or a feeling ending, but kind of keep that sense of like you haven't resolved evil, And so that's, I think, what we were dealing with. That was the most difficult.
Well, the show premiered on Netflix about a year ago and almost instantly became one of Nielsen's top 10 streaming shows. And you have talked in the past about having ideas for season 5, and there's clearly still an interest in horror. So I guess I would say, and this is a question for those fans out there like myself who don't want to give up yet. How hopeful are you guys about being able to revisit this show or these characters in some form down the road?
I'm going to say never. We love the characters. We love the world. We love the visuals. We love our colleagues.
Who wrote West Side Story, the music? Leonard Bernstein. Leonard Bernstein had this thing where he would not let go of tunes. If he had a tune, it might be no on the town, but then no, then not in West Side Story, but then no, he would use it in Candide. So he would never let go of a tune because you can't, you should not be throwing those out the window. And I think we feel the same way about jokes and about movie or TV premises. And I think that's what our feeling is. If someone wants to come to us, a rich man, rich woman who wants to keep evil going, we're here. As Michelle said, if no one wants to do it, we're going to do it as sock puppets on home, one with an iPhone filming them. So.
Well, sell tickets. I'm sure you could sell out your living room for sure if that's what it comes to. Well, finally, I just want to say congratulations again on this incredible season. And I guess if there is one thing about this series that stands out for you, if that would make someone check it out who hasn't seen it, what would that be?
Watch 5 minutes of Andrea Martin chasing down demons and killing them with a shovel. And I think you will be like me, where you will be a convert. And also listen to people online who watch a 5-minute section of it and go, what show is that? I want to watch that. This show is meant to be like potato chips that you can't give up because you just need to keep eating them. And I think that's what we were hoping for because it entertains us. I think it will entertain everybody.
And it's just this idea of taking somewhat esoteric topics and making them silly.
Yeah. And also I think, the idea of like things that scare us and helping us understand why they scare us in a way.
I think that's right. I mean, one of the scariest things is the elevator episode because I am terrified by elevators, and just being able to address it somehow kind of gets it out of your system.
And you almost killed Ben. I couldn't take it.
I know. Oh my God. Yeah.
Well, yeah, now people need to go find the elevator episode and watch it because it is, even as a standalone, oh my gosh, That is a really amazing episode. Well, thank you so much to Robert and Michelle King and to our friends at Paramount Plus for joining us today. I'm Kristen Baldwin, and this has been Half Hour with Evil.